years, the biggest issue haunting India's real estate sector is that of stalled housing projects. What went wrong? Developer greed, funds siphoned off, mismanagement, sales slowdown, or even lack of debt finance to complete the projects. The collective outrage on homes not delivered was so much that a stressed fund by the name of Swami Alternate Investment Fund was set up by the government to untangle this mess. A year and few months later, this fund seems to have made reasonable progress. The first few stalled projects are ready to be handed over to the home buyers. Which are these projects and how are the home buyers feeling? We bring you the on-ground report.
Rivali Park, Borivali East, launched in 2013, is getting its finishing touches. For several years, construction in the project has come to a grinding halt, giving its 700 buyers sleepless nights. Finally, there is a ray of hope with the project ready for delivery.
And there was a point when there was virtually no hope, which we had. The project had come to a standstill. The fund flows which happened on account of Swami stepping in, the kind of confidence it brought because of their extreme controls over the project cash flows and execution timelines. We are now expecting the possession within a month's time.
For desperate Rivali Park home buyers, a no-hope situation changed when Swami Investment Fund for Stressed Residential Projects stepped in to take first charge of the stuck housing project. The 25,000 crore rupee investment fund was approved by the Union Cabinet in November 2019 and set up under the aegis of SBI Cap Ventures to enable the completion of badly stuck housing projects across India. The fund is likely to hand over 6,000 to 7,000 stuck homes in the next 12 to 14 months. NDTV has learnt that the first few projects to be delivered with funding from the Swami Stressed Fund include SS Group, Leaf, Gurgaon, Amangani in Rewari, along with Rivali Park in Borivali, Mumbai. Other projects likely to be completed and delivered by the 31st of March 2022 under the Swami Fund include Ramprastha Primera in Gurgaon, Mantri Serenity in Bengaluru, TDI Lake Grove in Kundli Sonipat, Lodha Upper Thane in Mumbai, Plaza Elite Acres in Chennai. NDTV visited the Primera site to check the status of construction.
After the Swami funds, we are now very hopeful because I could see that in last 6 months the development and progress which is very visible right now. You could see that these this progress looks like that they are now on left out part is only 10-15%, where we feel that we should be getting this by end of May or end of June.
So far, 164 stuck or delayed projects have been approved to receive funding from the Swami Stressed Fund, giving hope to a lakh home buyers. The challenge of India's delayed homes, though, is much larger, with 5 lakh housing units stuck across the country. Untangling the mess and getting these delivered will need multiple Swami funds.
Multiple Swami funds needed. This 25,000 crore bailout fund may simply not be enough, but it is a very promising start to an extremely messy problem. Let me welcome the man at the helm of Swami Fund, Irfan Kazi, Chief Investment Officer at SBI Cap Ventures Limited, to find out what more can the stuck home buyers expect. Irfan, thank you very much for being with us. I think first let me ask you for a confirmation and the breakup of those 164 projects approved for funding. How many have received the final approvals and what is the quantum of funds set aside for the completion of these?
So the scoreboard that we referred to, we have given final approval to 55 projects. We've given initial approval to 109 projects. Between those 164 projects, we hope to complete about 1 lakh homes.
All right. Let me look at the total number now. 164, you said, approved by the Swami Fund for funding.
Sure.
But if I look at the number of total stalled projects across India, it's 1,600. So we're talking about just 10% of total projects which are getting the bailout fund. Which projects make the cut is my question.
So to put the numbers in context, right, Manisha, understand that we are talking about projects launched since 2008. So it's a 12-year-old problem, and there are projects that were launched even earlier. So a 12 to 15-year problem that is being solved now. And, therefore we have all the entire legacy of the past that has accumulated. And we are now trying to unravel and solve for the funding issue that could lead to completion.
Because there are so many projects, like you rightly said,
Sure.
and they have legacy issues. They're pending for 12 years. How do you decide which projects will qualify for the funding and which ones don't make the cut?
Sure. So there is an analysis that happens at two levels. One is the fund has a basic qualifying criteria. So, and we've made that public enough. So the fund can cater only to affordable and mid-income housing, and we've defined those terms. The fund can cater only to projects that are at least 30% complete. That's our definition of brownfield. The fund will provide last mile senior funding. The fund will only cater to net worth positive projects. So that's the eligibility criteria. And of course, the last one, probably as important, is the fund will only complete RERA registered projects. So this is the eligibility criteria, and that is the basic criteria for a deal to be considered. The next level of analysis, and I think that's where our team contribution comes into a very large extent, is we have to look at what is the credit, do a credit appraisal. We have to look at what are the litigations involved. We have to look at what are the penalties and the dues involved to home buyers. And finally, we have to also form a view on approvals or the lack of it, and to what extent they would hamper an immediate revival of the project.
So in your experience, I mean, we'll come to the cash flow positive a little bit later. In your experience, out of all the things that you've listed, what are some of the biggest pain points which make it tricky to fund every stalled project?
So the eligibility criteria is fairly straightforward. And even when the eligibility criteria was being devised, so it is not by accident, it's by design. It was made to be generous, and so that most of the stalled projects, most of the stress projects would fit in. In fact, when we did a back testing, about 94% or so of the stress projects in the country would fit into the kind of eligibility criteria. I think the biggest hurdles in this is, let's take them one at a time, right? So one is approvals. We take a almost benign, empathetic view on approvals, on regulatory approvals that are needed to complete the project. But there are some approvals without which we cannot do at all. So, for example, one constant hurdle we have is environmental approval. Environmental approval used to be given for about 5 years. In many cases, environmental approval has not been applied for. Environmental approvals have lapsed. Now, if that's the case, then we cannot do the funding.
Would you be in a position to actually, along with the home, also give the interest on the delay that the home buyers incurred? I mean, he's been with the project for 10 to 12 years and paying EMIs.
So the answer is yes and no. It's possible in some cases where the accumulated interest, where the accumulated liabilities aren't significant, and where we, after doing an analysis of the cash flows, reach a conclusion that the cash flows can take the burden of those interest and refund payments. But that's in a minority of cases. In a majority of the cases, the cash flows aren't robust enough. There aren't enough cash flows left. The residual cash flows aren't enough. Simply put, to take care of the interest and refund liabilities after completing the project. So, we have to get our priorities right at that point in time. Do we complete the project? Do we allow the cash flows to provide for interest and refund? And that's when we, speak to home buyers and home buyer associations and tell them that we are here to help the home buyers, but we can only do it if the home buyers partner with us. So, we cannot have the home buyers working against us. We need to have the home buyers working along with us so that all the funding is channeled into completing the project.
Understood. So that's a very strong message that home buyers have to moderate their expectations depending on what is left in the project. Are there enough cash flows, inventory, etc., to actually also honor their interest repayments? Finally, I think the big question, and everybody's been saying that 25,000 crore fund which was committed and approved by the Union Cabinet is simply not enough. Do you believe that if you're saying that 94% of the stalled projects can make the cut for Swami Fund, then the fund size committed itself has to grow humongously? Government puts in 50%, that number has to be much bigger, and also what SBI puts in, and of course private players put in.
So that's clearly not a worry for us. We are in a very fortunate position to emphatically state that funding has never been considered a bottleneck in terms of the size of the problem we can address.
Okay.
We have enough funds to address the current deals that we are doing. And it has been made amply clear to us by our sponsors that we can get as much funds as required to deal with the issue.
Well, Irfan Qazi, those are music to the ears of stuck home buyers that, if they can just work along with the fund, then probably their stalled project can make the cut as well for funding and getting completed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much.
When we come back, what's brewing in Noida and Greater Noida's housing market with a new airport investment announcement almost every other day, and IKEA's decision to set up its largest India outlet in Noida.